I'll never forget the day I caught my wife cheating. I came home early from work and heard strange noises coming from our bedroom. When I opened the door, there was my wife in bed with our next-door neighbor, Mr. Jenkins, a man who was at least 80 years old. She tried to explain it away as just helping him with his lumbago, but I knew better. It was a perfectly ordinary Wednesday afternoon when my life got turned upside down. I had left the office a little early, hoping to surprise my wife Susan by getting home before her. Our next-door neighbor, Mr. Jenkins, was out tending to his prize-winning rose garden as I pulled into the driveway, giving me a friendly wave that I numbly returned. Little did I know at that moment the shocking tableau that awaited me inside. As I entered the house, I heard a muffled thumping sound coming from our bedroom upstairs. Strange, I thought Susan shouldn't be home from work yet. Maybe the Hendersons were having renovations done again, and it was just the sound traveling through the walls. I climbed the stairs, and the noises became more distinct, rhythmic creaking, punctuated by gasps and groans. A cold dread began creeping into my stomach as I realized what the horrible sounds must be. Please don't let it be what I think. I desperately pleaded to whatever deity would listen. I crept across the hallway, shoes off now, so as not to make any noise and potentially alert whoever was in there to my presence. As I approached the bedroom door, it was ajar ever so slightly. I could make out two figures moving on the bed. One was clearly my wife based on her flaming red hair splayed across the pillow. The other was unmistakably elderly Mr. Jenkins, his skinny frame hunched over her nakedly writhing form. For an endless, nightmarish moment, I stood there dumbstruck, hand over my mouth to stifle any sounds of shock or revulsion. Mr. Jenkins' hips jackhammered almost violently, while my wife clawed at his back, seemingly lost in the throes of ecstasy. I wanted to run, to flee that horrific sight, but some terrible fascination held me rooted in place, barely resisting the urge to vomit. Just when I thought the torment couldn't get any worse, Susan suddenly arched her back and let out a deep shuddering moan of "Oh Henry," which triggered a visceral spasm throughout my entire body. I stumbled back, overcame, and ended up crashing loudly into the bathroom door across the hall. The sudden noise caused them to freeze mid-coitus. Mr. Jenkins' head whipped around towards the door, his roomy eyes widening in terror as he saw me standing there. "Oh Lordy!" he cried out in a reedy voice, frantically trying to cover his privates. Susan simply lay there, chest heaving, unable or unwilling yet to face me. David," she stammered at last. You're home early." By this point, I had found my voice, choking out the words through a haze of confusion and hurt. "Get out," I growled at Mr. Jenkins, unable to even look at my wife. "Get your withered old carcass out of my bed and out of my house this instant." The old man didn't need to be told twice. Never had I seen someone move so fast despite their advanced age and ostensible back issues. He fairly leapt off the bed, grabbing his clothes and hobbling out into the hallway, wearing nothing but one sock. I sidestepped to let him pass, not wanting any part of his shriveled anatomy to so much as brush against me. As Mr. Jenkins tottered off down the hallway towards the stairs, I turned back to face Susan, who had now sat up and was clutching the bedsheet around her body in a futile attempt at modesty. "David, I can explain," she began, her voice trembling. "Explain," I roared, the torrent of rage and emotions I had been damming up finally bursting forth. "You're damn right you're going to explain. Like, how about explaining why I just caught you cheating on me, in our marital bed no less, with a man who could literally be your grandfather?" Susan flinched at the venom in my voice. Tears welled up in her eyes as she tried to respond. "It's not what it looks like. Henry has such a bad case of lumbago, and I would just try and help him get some relief." I stared at her incredulously, barely able to process the absurd lies she was trying to feed me. Relief? From rubbing one out with my wife. I spat out the words with maximum derision. "Do you think I'm an imbecile, Susan? I'm not some naive child who's going to buy that feeble excuse." Her face crumpled and the tears began flowing in earnest now. "David, please, I never meant to hurt you. It was just a terrible lapse in judgment, a moment of weakness. You have to believe it didn't mean anything." A harsh laugh tore from my throat. "It didn't mean anything. Tell that to poor Mr. Jenkins, whose back you were trying to fix." I grabbed the nearest object, a framed photo of us on our honeymoon in Bali, and flung it across the room where it shattered against the wall. Susan flinched at the noise, cowering back. Suddenly her eyes went wide as realization seemed to dawn. "Oh God, you don't think that Henry and I, all this time?" Her head shook vehemently. No, David, I swear in my life this was the first time anything has ever happened. You have to believe me." Part of me wanted to believe her so desperately. We've been together for 12 years after all. High school sweethearts who had stood before God and everyone we knew, pledging our everlasting love and fidelity. Could I really throw all that away based on one terrible mistake? The other part kept replaying the obscene image of her writhing beneath Mr. Jenkins' skeletal frame, calling out another man's name in ecstasy. "Get out," I said in a low, dangerous voice. "Get your things and get out of my house." I can't even look at you right now. I turn away, clenching my fists so hard my fingernails cut into my palms. David, no. Please, we can work through this. Everyone makes mistakes. She scrambled off the bed, clutching the sheet around herself as she hurried over. Her hand landed on my arm, and I flinched away as if burned. Don't touch me. The words lashed out like a whip crack. Just don't. I could feel my control rapidly slipping. The vision of her and Mr. Jenkins burned forever into my brain. You have till the end of the day to get your things and be out. After that, I didn't bother finishing the sentence, just turned on my heel and stormed out of the bedroom, slamming the door behind me hard enough that the walls shook. I could still hear her sobbing through the thin walls as I stalked down the hallway and stairs like a thundercloud. At some point, Mr. Jenkins must have fled back to his own home, but I didn't even spare a thought for the old leck as I grabbed my keys and stormed out to the car. I just had to get out, get away from the house and everything in it that reminded me of my disgraceful wife. The car peeled out of the driveway, tires squealing in protest as I tore off aimlessly down the street. Blind with rage, hurt, and hatred pounding through my veins like thick sludge, poisoning every vein. My grip was so tight on the steering wheel that my knuckles were white as bone. I must have driven around for hours in that blacked-out fog, the nice suburban scenery doing nothing to calm the raging storm inside me. How could she do this to us? To our marriage, our life together, the future we planned? The more I replayed it in my mind, the more unreal and visceral the images became, as if I was trapped in some deranged nightmare. But it wasn't a nightmare. It was horrifyingly, despicably real. When the shakes finally set in and I realized I was barely in control of the car anymore, I managed to pull off onto a side street and put it in park. I couldn't even remember where I'd ended up, just someplace quiet and tree-lined. My body felt like it went into some sort of shock stasis, gripping the wheel with my head slumped against it while I shuddered and shook. Time became meaningless, the world fading into an indistinguishable blur around me until... Knock, knock. The rapping at the window made me jolt back into reality. A police officer was standing outside the car, giving me a concerned look while motioning for me to roll down the window. Sir, are you all right? The officer gave me a long look as I lowered the window. You've been sitting here for a while, and I wanted to check if everything's okay. I stared at him dumbly for a moment, trying to get my scrambled thoughts in order. Yes, officer. I'm fine. Just needed to pull over and collect myself for a bit. He raised an eyebrow skeptically. Everything is all right at home, sir. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Oh, it's just perfect, officer. My wife was just in bed with our 80-year-old next-door neighbor when I got home early from work. The cop's eyes went wide and he let out a low whistle. Well, I'd say that's grounds for losing one's cool. You haven't been driving recklessly, I hope. No, just aimlessly. Trying to wrap my head around everything. I rubbed my temples wearily. I understand, he said with a nod. Look, why don't you let me give you a ride somewhere? Get you off the road for a while until you've settled down. Can't be easy processing something like that. I was about to refuse, but then thought better of it. What was I going to do? Just keep driving around all night. I needed to get someplace safe where I could regroup and figure out my next steps. You know what, officer? I'd appreciate that. There's a motel down on Carson. I can get a room for the night. He gave me a somber nod and motioned for me to step out. I grabbed my things from the car and he called it in before we headed towards his squad car parked up the street. As I settled into the back, I finally felt the rage ebbing into something more like grim resignation and soul-crushing sadness. The officer dropped me off at the Budget Manor Motel, and I got a room for the night, carrying my small bag inside in a daze. I collapsed onto the squeaky bed, staring up at the water-stained ceiling as a sick numbness rolled over me. I'm not sure how long I lay there unmoving, trapped in my own whirlpool of memories and self-doubt. Could I have done something to drive Susan into another man's arms? Was I not giving her enough attention? Too wrapped up in my work? The torturous questions kept circling endlessly until eventually I slipped into a fitful sleep. The cheerful light of morning filtering through the cheap curtains roused me far too early. I squinted at the bedside clock, which showed 7:18 a.m. With a groan, I turned over and tried to recapture the blissful unawareness of slumber. But it was too late. The previous day's horrors came crashing back in full vivid detail. I forced myself upright, cradling my throbbing head in my hands as I tried to process my next move. Susan. I needed to talk to her, to look her in the eyes and... What? Beg for answers? For her to take me back? The thought made me feel so small, pathetic. No, I was done being the schmuck she could just walk all over. Resolute, I swung my legs over the side of the bed and went to take a scalding, hot shower. I'd go back to the house, tell her to finish packing her things, and be gone. Permanently this time. No more second chances, no sham forgiveness. Our marriage was deader than Mr. Jenkins's libido. Clean and with a grim determination carrying me forward, I checked out of the motel and called an Uber to take me back to the house. My heart was pounding in trepidation as we pulled up in front of the place I'd called home for the past 6 years. "Keep the meter running," I told the driver, figuring I'd need a quick escape route when this was done. I brushed past the dumbstruck Mr. Jenkins pruning his hedges and stalked up to the front door, letting myself in without knocking. "Susan," I called out, my voice eerily calm and steady. "We need to talk." No response. I headed up the stairs towards our bedroom, spine stiffening as I passed the open door and saw the disheveled, soulless wreck of sheets and pillows where it had all unfolded. The bathroom door was closed, with a flickering TV light emanating from beneath it. "Susan, I know you're in there." I raised my voice, rapping my knuckles loudly on the wood paneling. "We're going to settle this once and for all. I deserve that much at least." Still nothing. An icy trickle of dread began working its way through my veins. What if she'd done something rash? Oh, God. I tried the bathroom door, and it was unlocked. Steeling myself, I pushed it open slowly, and stopped dead in my tracks. Susan was lying crumpled on the tile floor, eyes closed and skin disturbingly pale. For a moment I thought the absolute worst, that she had taken her own life in a fit of grief and shame. But then I noticed the faint rise and fall of her chest. "Susan." I rushed over and dropped to my knees beside her, cradling her head in my hands. Her face was beaded with sweat, and she seemed to be drifting in and out of consciousness, mumbling incoherently. I fumbled for my phone to call an ambulance when a glint of plastic on the floor caught my eye. There was an empty pill bottle that had rolled underneath the vanity, along with a crumpled piece of paper I quickly snatched up. My blood turned to ice in my veins as I read the shaky scrawl. "David, I'm so sorry. I couldn't bear to live with the pain of what I've done. Please know that I love you with every fiber of my being. What happened with Henry was unforgivable. I realize that now too late. Don't blame yourself, my love. None of this is your fault." It trailed off there, the words disintegrating into a scribbled line as she must have dropped the pen. Oh God, no. What had she done? I scanned the pill bottle and felt panic grip me like a vice. It was an old bottle of extra-strength painkillers left over from when Susan had gotten wisdom teeth removed last year. Enough pills to easily cause an overdose and shut down her vital systems. "No, no, no, no," I shouted, gathering her up and shaking her limp form as hot tears streamed down my cheeks. "Oh, don't you dare die on me, Susan. I can't lose you like this, please." With reckless desperation, I fumbled for my phone and dialed 911, pulling Susan's body fully onto my lap as I tried to make her responsive. The operator's calm voice was in my ear, but it all sounded muffled and distant as the weight of the situation crashed over me in waves. She had tried to kill herself. My wife, my partner of over a decade, the woman I had loved and cherished beyond all reason, because she thought she had lost me forever with her terrible mistake. No, this couldn't be how it ended. We would get through this. We had to. I was only vaguely aware of the paramedics arriving and rushing into the bathroom. Incredibly calm and professional, they deftly moved me aside and set about working to stabilize Susan, administering activated charcoal, pumping her stomach, doing all the grim procedures needed for a serious overdose case. All I could do was watch in numb shock, sunk into the floor against the wall and hugging my knees to my chest. Unbeknownst to me, Mr. Jenkins must have seen the first responder vehicles arrive because he came tottering into the bathroom at one point, letting out a dismayed cry at seeing Susan's prone body. "Dear Lord, what in tarnation happened here?" he croaked in his bone-dry voice. All the pain and turmoil suddenly welled up inside me at seeing the man who had cuckolded me. With an incoherent roar of rage, I launched myself at Mr. Jenkins, grabbing him by the collar of his sweater and shoving him up against the wall. "This is your fault, you decrepit son of a bitch," I raged in his withered face, spraying spittle. "If you hadn't stuck your shriveled old dick into my wife, none of this would have happened." It took 2 paramedics to pry me off the frightened octogenarian, urging me to calm down as Mr. Jenkins sank to the floor, racked with wheezing coughs. Another dark stain on my conscience, but at that moment I couldn't have cared less about the ancient pervert's well-being. In a flurry of activity, the EMTs were loading Susan onto a gurney and wheeling her out to the ambulance, still unconscious but with a steady 4 drip hooked into her arm. One of them, a young woman with kind eyes, approached me while her partner secured Mr. Jenkins to a separate gurney for transport as well. "Your wife is going to be okay, sir," she said in a soothing voice. "We got the overdose reversed and she's stabilized for now, but she'll need to go to the hospital for monitoring and likely psychiatric evaluation." I let out a ragged breath, suddenly feeling as drained and depleted as a wet rag. Thank God. I thought I'd lost her. I looked up at the EMT imploringly. Can I ride in the ambulance with her? Please.